Hello and welcome to IdeaGen's Acceleration Summit Series. Today we have with us a great power chat by Annabelle Ship, the founder of Bootstrap Business School, Inc. Annabelle, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here to share my story.
Well, we are so excited to have you here, and we are so excited to hear the insights that you bring. So to jump right into it, let's start by learning a little bit more about the work that you lead in the Suncoast region of Florida, aimed at building more resilient, thriving, inclusive communities. Tell us a little about the work and the initiatives that you're leading.
Sure. Well, in 2018, I started a nonprofit called Bootstrap Business School. And our mission is to transform lives and communities through the power of entrepreneurship. And the way we do that is by running boot camps for low-income, mostly minority residents. And it takes them from idea to launch in just 2 weeks. I had spent 25 years running a variety of businesses in the Boston area. And when I moved down to the Tampa Bay area, I was looking for my next step. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I looked back and realized that the way I had started my businesses, especially my first business, was a great model for someone who didn't have any money, didn't have any experience, and didn't have any connections. And our work, as I said, is focused on helping low-income people. And in Tampa, that translates to mostly African-American and Hispanic residents. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, but we're attracting mostly about 90% women. But the program is open to anyone who qualifies financially, and we give full scholarships. And we are sponsored right now by United Way Suncoast in the Tampa Bay area, which is very exciting for us. And we're currently looking for more sponsors so that we can bring the program both deeper and wider. So as I mentioned, the program is geared specifically towards a low-income aspiring entrepreneur. And there are differences in the program that we developed, especially to tailor the program to that demographic. And the differences apply to what we teach, and they also apply to how we teach it. So we basically turn the traditional method of teaching entrepreneurship on its head. So the first thing we do is we teach the people that they need to hold on to their day job, because especially if you don't have any money, it's really a big risk to leave your job and jump all the way in, because there's a good chance that that first business won't work. And so we teach people how to work around their job. And if they don't have a job, we help them and we encourage them and give them skills to help them go out and get a job. The second thing we teach people is to not write a business plan, because if you don't have any experience in writing a plan, if you've never run a business before, if you don't have the education, business plans are incredibly daunting. And usually what happens is people write a business plan, they stick it in a drawer, and then they say, now what? So we teach the now what. And it's not like we don't teach planning. We're very much into planning, but it's much more action-oriented. We do action plans, and that's how we go forward. The next thing is that we teach people not to take loans. If you don't have any money, if you go out and borrow money from your mother or from your friends, or you take it out of your savings, it's a very, very big risk. It can ruin your relationships with the people you borrow the money from. It's just not a good idea. And the fact is, you can bootstrap your business. You can start where you are with what you have and then slowly build up. And that's what we teach. And it works much better for somebody who doesn't have deep pockets. Then the next thing we teach people is to take their giant dream. And most people come with a really big dream, and that's wonderful. We teach them how to chop it down into a very small, actionable step that they can take immediately and start making money. And then slowly they build on that step until they get to where they originally wanted to go. And then the last thing that makes it different is that we teach people confidence. And that's probably the biggest thing between somebody who succeeds and somebody who doesn't succeed, is that confidence is being able to face their fears and move through it and make things happen. And I believe that that is something you can actually teach people, and we work on that every single day in our boot camp. So that's what makes what we teach different, but how we teach is also different. So the first thing we do is we run a boot camp. It's very intense. Like I said, it runs for 2 weeks. And most entrepreneur support organizations run their courses over like a 10-week or 12-week or 16 weeks. And it's a lot harder for people to be committed. This way, they jump in with both feet for 2 weeks. They put everything else aside. They're focused completely on starting their business. And we find that it brings wonderful results. If you go once a week, maybe one day your child is sick, the next week you have a problem at work, and all of a sudden you've fallen behind and you end up quitting. But with the boot camp, it works much, much better. We have a very high level of commitment, very little attrition. The second thing we do is that all of our instructors are active entrepreneurs. We aren't using academics or retired executives. We're engaging people who are running small businesses and who are in the trenches. They've been there, they've done that, and that's very inspiring for the students. And we work very hard in representation. We want the people who are standing in front of the students to look like the students, to come from similar backgrounds, because that shows the students that the dream is out there for them, that they can do it. And then we work hard at forming community. So while we were running the program in person before the pandemic, we were able to create a wonderful sense of community among the students, so that they formed their own support system, so that they had accountability to each other. And that carried forward after the boot camp ended. And I'm very pleased to report that after running the boot camp now, this past year, 2 times virtually, we're able to create that same sense of community on Zoom as we were able to do in person. And then the last thing we do that's a little bit different is that we do ongoing support. So the students have their own ongoing support, but we also offer a mastermind every Sunday night. And that's free to the students who graduate. And we have a virtual community online where there's a business library and resources, and students can communicate with each other and share their own resources. So that's really what makes it different. That's what the initiative is. We've run the program now 4 times in the Tampa Bay area, and we're looking forward to expanding it. Like I said, growing deeper and growing wider.
I absolutely love that initiative, and I can see why now it's more important than ever. And also the fact that you've continued your work through into the pandemic. And we've seen small businesses take some of the hardest hits as of recently, and so I can see why the work that you're doing, the initiatives that you're doing, are essential. I also love the fact that you're working with United Way. It's important to note that's how we were introduced to each other. That's how we were able to connect with you and Bootstrap Business School was through United Way. So I love that there's that partnership there. Moving on, how do you choose your target population to work with? And how do you choose particular issues to address?
Okay, well, one of the workshops that we teach actually is how to find a great idea. So when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life before I started the organization, I just followed that same format. So a great idea is something that interests or excites you, something that you're good at, and something that solves a problem and that people are willing to pay for. So after selling my last business and moving to Tampa, as I said, I was looking for my next step. And I realized that I've been fascinated by entrepreneurship since the age of 4. So that basically checked off something that interests and excites me. And then I also realized that I had very specific skill set that I could help people start businesses quickly and on a shoestring budget. So, and I'd done that 5 times up in the Boston area. So I knew I was good at it. So that checked off something you're good at. And then the last thing was that everywhere I turned, people were saying to me they wanted to start businesses, but they didn't know how to do it. They didn't have the experience. They were nervous about leaving their job. And when I looked around the Tampa area, I could see that the communities that weren't being served were low-income minority communities. And I didn't want to just start any business. I wanted to start some kind of initiative that would give back to society. And so I drove around in these neighborhoods. I could see that there was a lot of need. There were retail stores that were empty. And of course, now they're emptier. There were a lot of stores and businesses that were struggling. So I put these 3 things together. That's something that solves a problem. And I looked back and realized that business ownership had given me an incredible gift of the ability to create. And it had given me wonderful freedom. It had allowed me to sell my last business and move down to Florida and basically figure out what I wanted to do with my life and go in a completely different direction. And I wanted to give that gift to other people. I wanted to show people who don't necessarily believe in themselves that, yes, you can do this. I know how to make this happen. I can show you how to do it. I'm behind you. I want to help you. So that's how I did it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it sounds like you had the passion for it, you had the experience, and you saw the need. If that's not what an entrepreneur is right there, then I don't know what is. And that's amazing. And so it certainly sounds like, with yourself being a leader and also working with many other leaders, what advice do you have for them who have great ideas, but might not know how to bring them to fruition or scale?
Well, that's a great question for me because that's exactly what I teach people. And it applies to businesses, it applies to nonprofits, it applies to basically any initiative. So the first thing I would say is that Just go out. This is what I call the Nike system of starting a business, or the Nike system of doing something. Just do it. Just go out and make something happen, because if you hold yourself back, you'll dream about it for years and years and years. And really what you have to do is just go out and do it. And you can eliminate, like I said, a lot of the financial risk by taking it down to a small step. So you may have a giant idea, but figure out, how can I do that? How can I do something in the next couple of months or the next couple of weeks? And at the very worst, if you haven't spent a lot of money, at the very worst, you'll have learned a whole bunch of new skills, and you'll have learned about new tools. You've met new people. And at the very worst, that you come back to square A and you start over again. The next thing I would say is not to let your fear guide your life, because I think so many people are guided by fear. And I've trained myself over many years to look at fear as opportunity and to move forward when I have that feeling, because I know that there's something amazing on the other end. So I think that's one of the biggest differences between people who make things happen and people who don't make things happen, is that they get paralyzed by the fear. So I would say, just move past that fear and move forward. And then the next thing I would say is that you cannot make things happen on your own. You have to network and find other people. And when I first moved to the Tampa area, I didn't know anybody, but little by little, I started to meet people, and one person introduced me to another person. And it's actually how I ended up into United Way, because I knew one person who introduced me to somebody else who then that went to somebody else. And I got invited to a networking event. And at that networking event, I met a gentleman named Mike Bach, who was just standing at the event, looking just imposing and interesting. And I went up to him and I told him what I was doing, and we exchanged cards. And he actually called me. We got together for a few hours. And after speaking for about 3 hours, he said, "I want to introduce you to United Way." He had a connection there. He's now the chairman of our board. And actually, when I tell that story to the students at the end of the boot camp, and I say, the reason you're sitting here with a full scholarship is because of all of those connections, starting with that one friend. It really makes them understand the whole power of how networking connects people and makes things happen. And it also makes me very relatable, because they understand that I'm in the trenches with them. I'm doing the exact same thing that they're doing. So networking, make sure that you're connecting with as many people as possible, because you never know who might know somebody else or who might lead to that last person. And then I guess the last thing I would say is don't be afraid to admit when you don't know something, because I think we learn almost in like grade 1 or 2 that when you raise your hand, someone's going to laugh at you. And that's not a good lesson, because you have to be able to ask questions and admit that you don't know something in order to keep learning. So I would say, don't be afraid to say, I've never heard of that person, or I've never heard of that idea or that word, and let people know that you're vulnerable, that you're trying to learn, because that will lead you to the answers. So that's probably my best advice. But the basic concept around all of that is just go make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I really like a lot of the points you just brought up, asking questions, really harnessing the power of networking. And it's interesting that you say, use fear as almost as an opportunity. I think that's a fun way of twisting it around and kind of getting out of your comfort zone and pushing yourself to do something to achieve, your goals and your accomplishments. And so it certainly sounds like along this journey, you have really kind of perfected this path and the class and the courses that you teach. So how has innovation played a role in the development of the work that you've been doing?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because I think innovation has been the driving force behind absolutely everything I do from the very beginning, because it's the ability to create and to keep making things happen that really makes my work interesting to me. So it's always been like that. I've been like that since I was a young child. And I don't necessarily think about what other people are doing, but I think more about what can be done. And so this keeps me from just following traditional way of doing things. So it was only when I looked back and saw how I had started my businesses that I realized that I had something that I could teach, and I could teach other people. So sometimes you realize you've innovated only by looking back at it. And like I mentioned, most entrepreneur support organizations just ask people to write business plans. And that's the traditional way of doing it. But we realized that by using mind maps, it was a much more creative way to get people's ideas out of their heads and onto paper. And the students love it. And then we took that and we learned how to take that and turn it into project sheets. So they could take all of the different things they thought about and lay out all of the projects and break them down into small little bits so they could actually get done. And then we taught them how to take those project sheets and turn them into weekly action sheets. So it's a very, very simple method, but it's different than what most people do, and it's very, very effective. So of course, having lots of ideas can also be a negative. And I learned that a long time ago running businesses, that entrepreneurs in general are filled with ideas, and our compulsion is to go out and make all of them happen. And I used to try and do that. And then what happens is you're spread too thin and you're not really able to move any initiative forward. So I learned a system of getting my ideas out of my head onto paper so that they wouldn't distract me. So when I have an idea now, I write it down in a book. I brainstorm as much as possible. I get it out of my head. It's kind of like offloading your computer onto an external hard drive. And that's really helped me to be able to move forward with the ideas that I do want to work on. So innovation can be a distraction. It can be negative. But once you learn how to harness it and how to control it, it's really fantastic. And I think everything I'm doing is about innovation because I'm trying to inspire other people to innovate, and I'm trying to show them the path and help them understand that innovation is there. It's just ripe for the picking. You just have to go for it.
I love that thought process. I graduated business school in 2019, and I would have loved to have you as one of my professors, because that's a very creative way of looking at things. And, it's not always the same path that gets everyone to their goal. So I absolutely love that. And it sounds like, you've had your fair share of your own businesses, and now you're teaching others how to begin and perfect their own. So what has been one of the greatest challenges that you've had along this journey, whether it was with your own businesses or then teaching it to others?
Well, I do tell people that there are constant challenges when you're running a business or you're starting a nonprofit. As a matter of fact, starting a nonprofit has been the hardest thing I've ever done. It's much, much harder than running a for-profit business. So I think my biggest challenge over the past few years has just been keeping the faith and not getting discouraged and believing in my ideas. And there was a lot of networking I did where I was barking up the wrong tree, and I'd come home and feel incredibly discouraged until I finally met the right people, and I got the support of United Way and acknowledgement for what I was doing. And that's a story that I share with our students all the time. So they're bootstrapping a business, but I'm also bootstrapping a business. A nonprofit is still a business, and I'm still bootstrapping it. And again, it's one more point that makes me relatable, that we're all in the same boat. And if you understand from the beginning that it's going to be challenging, that it's going to be up and down, and that, a business is not straight up like that. It's definitely up and down, like very wiggly and turning. And there's a wonderful image, I'm not sure if you've seen it, of an iceberg. And above the water, you see the iceberg, and that's what people see. They see your success. They see you rising to the top. But underneath the water is the base of the iceberg, which was all of the hard work, all of the frustrating days, all of the tears, all of the sweat. And I think that's a wonderful image to keep in mind when you're doing anything, because it's easy to look at people and say, oh, overnight success, but there's no such thing. There's some base that they built and that they struggled through, they sweated through. And that's really what it's about. So I think knowing that I've gone through this many times over the last 25 years, and that it really helps me overcome that challenge, because I know that I'm going to be discouraged sometimes, but I'm going to get out of that and move forward. And lately I've been on a pretty good up trajectory. I know there'll be some more dips, but it's been going well.
I have seen that image, and I think that's a great analogy, because you're absolutely right. We see the successes in life. We don't always see how people got there. And so, you've talked about how you've had, these ups and downs. And so we've talked about some areas that might have been discouraging, but what has been one of your greatest points of pride? Was it with one of your businesses, or was it with one of your students in your school?
Well, I think I want to go back to United Way, because that was a big deal for me. I had never written a grant before, and I decided to go right to the top and apply for a grant with United Way. And I said running a nonprofit is incredibly challenging. Well, writing a grant is probably the hardest thing I've ever done. And there was a time, maybe 2 weeks before it was due, where I just wanted to crawl under the covers and give up. And I have a very supportive husband, and he said to me, Annabelle, just keep moving forward. Just keep one step in front of the other. And of course, that's what I teach my students, but sometimes you need to hear it from somebody else. And when I submitted the last document and hit send on the computer, it just felt so wonderful. And then to actually receive the grant, and I'm the little baby organization among a whole bunch of large organizations, which is very inspiring, because I'm learning from all of them. So that that's been very gratifying. And the fact that they believed in my vision and they wanted to be part of it is just incredibly encouraging to me. And now that we've transitioned the program to a virtual format from a live format, which we were forced to do because of the pandemic, that was a silver lining. And because we've proven that we can create that same sense of community, that same support system with people who are not right beside each other. So there's opportunity now to maybe expand the program across the country eventually, and to bring all of these aspiring low-income minority entrepreneurs together online for mutual support. So yeah, I think that's the thing I'm most proud of, and that was the biggest struggle, but that having achieved that, it's given me a shot in the arm that I can go out and raise more money and grow the program.
That certainly is something to be proud of. And, it's funny you just mentioned that iceberg analogy, and that was all that work that you did underneath the waterline. And now here you are, sponsored and working with United Way, and they connected you with us, being broadcast globally. It's just funny how it all works out in the end. So I'm glad to hear that, there are moments like that. And moving on here a little bit, if you could forecast out, 5-10 years, what impact would you like your work to have had in the Tampa Bay, Florida region?
Well, Tampa Bay will always be our home and our main focus. And let's say 5 to 10 years from now, I imagine hundreds of businesses throughout the Tampa Bay area that learned how to start businesses through Bootstrap Business School. And I can see how the ripple effect from that can really make an economic difference in the area, because those business owners will grow. They'll have to hire help. They will inspire their children and their families to go out and start businesses. And we already see that people come back and say, I told my sons and my daughters about the program yesterday, and they want to start a business. And Tampa Bay is already on the map as a wonderful place to start a business, but I'd like it to be on the map as a wonderful place for everyone to start a business. And I'd like to drive through the neighborhoods I was driving through and see all of the businesses thriving. I'd like to go to networking events and see more people of color and more women and more older people at the events. And now when we finish boot camp, we start to get applications immediately after, because people who graduate start to tell their friends and families. And so I envision that we won't even have to do any recruiting, because we'll have a long waiting list, and that when people think about starting a business, they will immediately think Bootstrap Business School and apply to our school. So that's the kind of thing I envision. I'm hoping that we can, as I said, expand the program beyond Tampa into the rest of Florida, eventually maybe across the country. But Tampa will always be our home and our main focus, because it's where we started and it's where my heart is.
Yeah, I think that's a great goal. And just from speaking with you for a few minutes, it certainly sounds like that's very achievable. If you put in, the initiatives that you're doing and really drive home those networking and the different aspects that I've heard you describe today to your students, I have no doubt that we'll be seeing that all over Florida. Bootstrap Business School. Mark my words, we'll see it here. Wrapping up, Annabelle, do you have any final words of advice for our viewers and our listeners? What have you learned about your work that you would like others to know?
Well, the feeling of gratification is amazing. So that's probably the biggest thing. When you go out and make something like this happen, despite the struggles, the feeling is amazing. And I'll tell you a little story about what happened. About 3 months before I started writing the grant for United Way, I was feeling kind of discouraged, because I'd been working on this for almost 2 years. I didn't have any funding yet. And I knew I'd proven that it worked. I knew it was a good initiative. But one day when I was really at a low point, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket, and I looked at my phone, and there was a message from a student, and she had taken the program with her father. Her father had been formerly incarcerated. He wanted to start a trucking company, and she was in her 20s. She was a trained chef, and she wanted to start a catering company. So I hadn't heard from them for about 3 months after the program ended. And this message said, there was a picture of her father standing in front of this giant truck with another guy in the cab driving. And she said, Annabelle, I wanted you to know that my father started his trucking company, and I'm about to start my catering company. And that lifted me completely out of my funk. It just completely changed my mindset. And I realized that anytime I felt low, all I had to do was think about the people I was helping and stop thinking about myself, and I would feel better. And that gave me enough energy and enough excitement to propel me through the difficulty of writing that first grant. And it taught me that I just have to focus on other people, and I will make it. So I guess what I'd like people to take away from this little talk is that they can do the same thing. That I think my biggest mission is giving people a shot in the arm. That's really, what I'm here to say is that if you have an idea, if you see a problem in your community that you want to solve, just go make it happen. And if you know that you want to solve a problem and you don't see the problem yet, you just know you want to do something, go out and start talking to people, because there are problems everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And then get back in touch with me, because I'd like to help. And one of the things we're doing, one of the ways we have come up with funding the program, is we're going to start offering the program for people who can afford to pay for it. And we'll sell the program to some people. And for everyone who buys a course, we will then offer a scholarship. So it'll be a way to fund our scholarships, kind of like Tom's Shoes that sells a pair of shoes and gives a pair away to someone in a third world country. We're going to do the same thing. So if you want to learn how to start a business, how to start an initiative, and we can help you, we'd love to do that. It's a way that we can see that we can fund the program and expand it. The way to reach out to me is through our website, which is Bootstrap B, like business, bootstrapbschool.org, or you can write to me, Annabelle at bootstrapbschool.org. But I'm here to say that you definitely can do it. Just a matter of having someone in your corner saying, yes, this is how you do it. This is where you go. These are the steps. These are the tools. And I'd love to help.
That's incredible. I love the initiatives. I love your work. And I love the model of how you put everything together. For our viewers and listeners, please look below. You will see the link to their website in the description of the video. Annabelle Ship, founder of Bootstrap Business School, Inc. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your work and your initiatives in your community and leading the way in order to create a sustainable community.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.